As a mangaka at Type Moon Chapter 211 to 220, 211, Vampires and Dead Apostles. The Holy Grail War. Huh. Under the moonlight, Dio looked down at the people below and smiled faintly. Indeed, I need to rely on myself after all. He wondered what kind of beings would be summoned this time. However, according to the manga given to him by his master, there were many powerful heroic spirits. Especially this time, with 13 enemies, he didn't believe that joining one camp would make them allies. Well then, first, I need to create subordinates. But without arrows, I can't create stand users. So, I'll create vampires, and I'm quite interested in the dead apostles of this world. Dio had his own desires. His wish was simple world domination. However, he currently lacked a physical body, he was just a phantom spirit, something that didn't actually exist. Therefore there was a certain substitution of wishes. Firstly, he needed to obtain a physical body. We're still 2 years away from that time, and the Holy Grail War is also about 2 years away. Interesting, everything is coming together. Well then let me, Dio, bring this all to a successful conclusion and become the ruler of the world. Prepare yourselves, weak humans, ha 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 ha. Meanwhile, at that time, there was another individual wandering the streets of Cairo. A man named Colin Kidd, a dead apostle. He had participated in 2 previous Holy Grail Wars, but those were merely games that summoned inferior heroic spirits. This time was different. Looking at the command spell on the back of his hand, he chuckled. This time, he wasn't holding back. He participated in the Holy Grail War for real. The winner would obtain the Holy Grail and fulfill their wish. And then he received the command spells. All that was left now was the Holy Relic. Suddenly, the dead apostle's footsteps came to a halt. Cold sweat began to bead on him. For the first time, he felt danger, and indescribable, fatal danger. He slowly turned around, and he saw the person standing behind him on the street, a figure. Are you the dead apostle? The man spoke in a gentle tone. And, your left hand? What is that? If you let me take a look, I'd be delighted. This guy Colin Kidd's body trembled. How could this be happening? He knew this person, or rather, many people knew this person, Dio Brando. In existence only present in the manga. Why was he appearing right in front of him? This was neither science nor magecraft. What on earth was happening? Are you afraid? The dead apostle's heart stopped suddenly. How could this be? In a soothing tone, Dio continued. Don't be afraid, let's be friends. Ha ha, ha ha, ha 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 ha. What a ridiculous situation. He had lived for hundreds of years. Even if you added up the time Dio spent sleeping in the Atlantic, his life was many times longer. However, facing this situation, he succumbed? Come on, tell me your name. How are you called? Colin Kidd gasped for breath and said, I'm Colin Kidd. Is that so, Colin? Don't be afraid, calm down. Yes, that's right. Come on, be my friend, Colin Kidd. With these words, accompanied by this voice, Dio Brando, at some point, once again stood in front of him, extending his hand. It was a negotiation, a gentle tone, but he couldn't refuse. There was no coercion, but Colin Kidd reached out with his left hand. In the next moment, Dio, looking at the outstretched hand of the dead apostle with the command spell, showed his fangs and smiled. Time passed. In March, an order from the Japanese government prohibited using real estate for silver futures mortgage loans, signaling the imminent collapse of the Japanese economic bubble. The year 1990 also passed through this continuous undercurrent of changes. There seemed to be no significant changes on the surface, but around this time, countless battles, overt and covert, occurred between the Mages Association, the Holy Church, and a war that was on a completely different level than the previous Holy Grail War. On the other hand, there were also changes in Jump. In the first half of the year, Ushio Totoro and Tetsuo Hara's new work, Hana no Keiji, began serialization. Although Ushio Totoro was not serialized in Jump but in the rival magazine Sunday, which belonged to Jump. Then, in the latter half of that era, a manga that can be said to have influenced the times began serialization on Jump. In October 1990, in an era where the Japanese economic bubble had already begun to show its initial signs, a manga titled Slam Dunk began serialization on Jump. On the other side, a few years ago, a manga drawn by Kazuya was finally completely adapted recently. The entire series consists of 616 chapters. It tells the story of a high school student named Ichigo Kurosaki. The manga is called Bleach. Just like when it was summoned before, the early part of this manga didn't undergo much change. There were significant changes in the middle, and almost everything was abandoned in the later part. Firstly, the strength of the characters inside was greatly enhanced, the power of the espada. Then, the stern Ritter was weakened, and all the unimportant characters inside were abandoned, leaving only a few clearly defined characters. They became the personal guard. In other words, the number of personal guards increased, and the rest were all weakened to the level of vice captains among the Shinigami, balancing it out. And, in a part of the flashback arc, specifically the part where Shinji Hiriko remembers their time as Vizards, an addition was made, the part where Aizen infiltrated the Invisible Empire, Wandenreich. And at that time, he planted the Kyoka Suigetsu. Later, the appearance of the Wandenreich was brought forward, placing it shortly after Aizen left the Soul Society and entered Hueco Mundo. When Ichigo Kurosaki and Yhwach were almost evenly matched, Ichigo, using Hogyoku to swallowed Yhwach. The original version doesn't matter, anyway, this time, what he draws is what counts. Then, it's a straight path with the Espada. Finally, defeat the Soul King Palace. All the Espada defeated, the captains and Zero Division of the Shinigami also defeated. Only Aizen swallowed the Soul King. After that, Ichigo Kurosaki, who was strengthened, used Mugetsu, sacrificing his own Shinigami powers, to cut through the past, defeat Aizen, and rid himself of the Shinigami's power. Conclusion. Undoubtedly, the main character has been greatly strengthened. The entire series consists of 616 chapters. There were 2 changes in the middle. He feels that compared to the disastrous Thousand-Year Blood War or in the original version, this one is much more comfortable and also explains some of the earlier inconsistencies. He also begins to prepare for serialization on Jump. 212, drawing near end 1991, Kazuya handed over the draft of the manga, Bleach, to his own editor. The third part of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure began airing on TV. At the same time, his own serialized manga, Hellsing, was reaching its conclusion. In a certain parallel world, the timeline had advanced slightly differently. 5 years had passed since the day Kurokawa Kazumi entered the parallel world. But on this side, it had only been about 2 years. 2012, a year bald as the end of the world in the parallel world. Forget about the end of the world stuff. Elmeloid 2, have you prepared your thesis? It's been 2 YCARS cynic, you came to the clock tower. You should have written at least 2 decent papers by now, right? I'm prepared, of course, I am. The girl took a sip of tea and said, but, sensei, can you open a back door for me? Haha. Elmeloid sighed helplessly and rubbed his forehead. It's because of such requests that you've been here for 2 years and still not a proper magus. Hurry up and write those 2 papers. Yes, I got it. The girl, Kurokawa Kazumi, sighed discontentedly, and then her eyes lit up as another girl entered, looking like a squirrel. Gray Senpal. Huh? Oh. When did you come? Kazumi. Kazumi smiled at the girl. Gray, despite being over 20 years old, still looked like a young girl. If we were to describe her with an animal, it would probably be a hamster. She was Kazumi's teacher and Elmeloid's disciple for over 10 years. A magus specializing in ritual magecraft. That's not entirely accurate, she wasn't a magus, but because she wielded the divine construct, she was labeled as a magus. In her hands was the genuine divine construct. The legendary holy lance used by King Arthur Rongamaniad. Most of the time, it acted as an intelligent entity named Ad, speaking on her behalf. This fact wasn't much of a secret within the clock tower. After all, she had been by Elmeloid's side for over a decade, joining him shortly after turning 10. And she had helped this practical magus, who was merely a cause-rank magus, overcome countless difficulties. The fact that she wielded a weapon was no longer a secret to many within the clock tower. However, knowing was one thing. Only she could wield it. Even if someone had the ability to snatch it away, at most, it could be treated as a decoration. And at some point, another fact became known: her face was identical to that of King Arthur. Just came over. Kazumi waved her hand. You know, there's a lot of talk about ominous things happening within the clock tower. The end of the world in 2012. I was curious, so I came to ask, Sensei. Really? Go back and write your thesis properly. It's better to avoid such irrelevant talk, Gray added. Yeah, I got it. Kazumi finished her tea and said, well then, I'm off, senpai. Fine, understood. Gray nodded and approached El Meloid 2, 2012, huh. A lot of people are discussing it. Is it okay, sensei? It's not entirely unrelated, but at least it doesn't concern us directly. Leave it to others to handle, and the church's executors will definitely take action. Gray seemed to understand but nodded vaguely. Now, it's hard to say if she's suitable, Kurokawa Kazumi. Ulmeloid 2 said, falling into a brief silence. Her magic circuits are generally normal, but the quality is exceptionally high. She possesses both the attributes of formations, and her magical power is abnormally vast. She's not particularly interested in magecraft, though. But, that girl, is not suitable to be a magus. Concluded again. Iwamoto Yu sighed as he looked at the thick stack of manuscript he had just received. It was another manga that was handed over to him without any prior consultation. Iwamoto Yu shook his head slightly and didn't say anything. Currently, the only manga he was involved in, Superhero, had already reached over 100 chapters. However, he had no intention of bringing it out for serialization. According to Kurokawa Kazuya, I'll talk about it after I finish drawing. And then, quietly, he concluded another manga without making any noise. With a helpless shake of his head, he picked up a stack and prepared to take a look. However, it was just a casual glance. After all, since it was given by Kurokawa Kazuya, it was almost certain that it would be serialized. After all, Jump and Jojo Animation had officially started their collaboration, and Kurokawa Kazuya's manga had always been of exceptionally high quality. After a while, some of the manga serialized on Jump might start getting anime adaptations. For example, Slam Dunk was only serialized up to the 6th chapter and was already scheduled for production by Jojo Animation. The high-quality animation of Jojo had already established their reputation. However, even so, Jojo Animation could only produce a maximum of 3 animations at a time. Most of the staff would be occupied with the production of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3. Moreover, it was rumored that Kurokawa Kazuya had produced another brilliant script. Bleach, huh? Looking at the name of the manga, Iwamoto Yu had a bit of anticipation. Just by looking at the cover, you could feel it directly drawing over 600 chapters indicated Kurokawa Kazuya's confidence. It must be a manga of high standards. On the other side. Just waking up from a dream, Kazuya slowly opened his eyes. He had just entered a dream world, a parallel world called Hellsing. The serialization of this manga had ended some time ago, concluding. So, he had just entered this dream world. Witnessed some people's scenes and battlefields inside, so, he had just entered this dream world. Witnessed some people, scenes, and battlefields inside. And now, he woke up. Looking at the 2 lottery panels in front of him, Kazuya had a bit of expectation. This was the last lottery before the Holy Grail War was about to begin. What could he obtain? Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. 213 Lottery and Military. Looking at the brick in front of him, Kazuya pondered slightly. This time, what he drew was not something ordinary, it was this brick. On the brick, there were 2 circles formed by blood, with a larger circle enveloping a smaller one. In the middle of the 2 circles, a series of characters were written. The same characters also surrounded the outer part of the 2 circles. At the center was a pentagram, connected to 5 notches on the circle, marked with a letter. At a glance, it was clear it was a magic circle. Some blood oozed out from the stone, spreading a bit. Unexpectedly, drew this thing. In terms of manga, this time, he drew Rurouni Kenshin, a manga he liked very much. It replaced the last gap and was immediately drawn out. He didn't expect it to happen so quickly. However, what surprised him even more was another thing he drew. It was the stone in front of him now. In Hellsing, Alucard, the vampire, was an extremely powerful existence. Unaffected by sunlight, silver bullets, holy water, none of the typical weaknesses of vampires applied to him. He was a dead apostle without weaknesses, possessing only strength. Moreover, he had powerful immortality. Alucard's usual battle strategy was to let someone spill his blood, get killed by someone else, and then counterattack. He could be considered completely immortal, with tens of thousands of souls in the river of death, meaning one had to kill him tens of thousands of times to truly defeat him. Once he started drinking blood, his life would continue to increase. He could also absorb the souls of the dead by drinking their blood, allowing them to fight for him. When Alucard unleashed the River of Death, he was at his weakest because, although the absorbed souls would materialize to assist him in battle, at that time, his life had only one chance: he would die once he was killed. However, after absorbing Schrödinger's blood that committed suicide, he became omnipresent, existing everywhere and nowhere. But because of the tens of thousands of souls within him, he became lost, not knowing who he was or where he was. At that time, the remaining essence of Alucard disappeared into this stone. Later, Alucard spent more than 30 years killing all but one of the 342,467 souls within him. Thus finding himself, he returned. And now, Kazuya held this stone in his hands. He felt a bit overwhelmed. What? Wait a few decades, and he could hatch another Alucard by himself here. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. Without a doubt, this world was home to Dracula, but it was not a vampire. Instead, it was very averse to others assigning identities to him. But, what about now? What about this summoning? Could he summon him, in the form of Alucard? This was really worth a try. The progress of the Holy Grail War is getting faster, probably about a year left. Kazuya's words were not far from reality. In 1992, when the Holy Grail War began, countless people would go to Egypt at that time. Oh, this is good, very good. What are you looking at again, Hansa? Speaking was an elderly priest with white hair, wrinkles on his face deep enough to catch flies, and age spots on his forehead. However, from the scars that peeked out from under his priest's robe, one could tell that he was not an ordinary priest. He had undoubtedly experienced numerous battles before. Ah, this, Kurakawa Kazuya's new manga. It just ended its serialization recently, and I immediately bought the tankobon. The speaking priest looked to be in his 20s. Medium-length black hair, an eye covered with an eye patch. Kurakawa Kazuya's new manga. The elderly priest slowly approached. What? In the Church and Mages Association, few people bothered to read manga because, whether for god or magecraft, it was unnecessary. At most, there were a few magus who saw it as a hobby. It wasn't until Fate Zero appeared that this manga slowly spread in the magical world. It revealed a lot of information that most magus and priests did not know about the Holy Grail War, heroic spirits summoning, and so on. People began to understand more about this system. Especially in this period, with the new Holy Grail War about to begin in Egypt. They needed to understand how heroic spirits were stored, what heroic spirits were, and how to deal with them after summoning, especially the research on Gilgamesh, the king of heroes. After all, this time the church was ready to summon that heroic spirit. And then after reading Fate, some people didn't care anymore and didn't bother to watch other manga. But some people were attracted by the manga world, starting to explore and read other manga deeply. Hanzo was one of them. This is it, Father Anderson is so handsome. Ah, gate like this. Haha, if you like it, that's good. The priest smiled. By the way, Master. Hanzo said to the priest, what do you think if our church also establishes a group called Iscariot? It looks cool. Impossible. The priest chuckled. Although he didn't know what Hanzo was talking about, just the name itself made it clear. Iscariot, it seemed, was mentioned in it. It was definitely not something to face the believers, that is to say, don't forget, we have executors and burial agency. No, it feels slightly different, Master. You'll understand when you see it. I understand. Taking the manga and putting it aside, the priest said, this time, you came with a new mission. Ah, a new mission. Yes. The elderly priest nodded. The Holy Grail War in Egypt is about to begin. According to the intelligence, Bartholomew Lorelei is preparing to bring her squad. No, it's already deployed. So, to deal with them, our church also needs to form a team to deal with them, and Hansa, I think you are suitable. Huh, isn't that great? Hansa's eyes lit up. Okay, I'm in, but can this new organization be called the Iscariot? Ah, gate. But I don't have control over this. Huh, then, who's in charge? Archbishop Alvanen, the executor Ambrose Conant, just like us. 214 The Army of Dead Apostles. In the dark room, women lay on the ground, lifeless. The original light in the room was almost non-existent, making it impossible to discern their facial expressions. Their eyes were wide open, and there were holes beside their necks, indicating their motionless state. They were already dead. Lord Dio, a woman, completely devoted, with eyes full of love for the man in front of her, bypassed the lifeless bodies on the ground and approached the man who was reading a book. Dio placed the book aside with a slight smile. His fingers touched the woman's neck, then plunged into it. Blood flowed into his body through his fingers. The woman fell to the ground, life extinguished. It seemed, she had no regrets judging by her expression. Or one could say, all the bodies on the floor willingly sacrificed themselves for the man Dio. Recovery is quite refreshing. Dio Brando stood up and stretched his body. The description, vulnerable left side, D, on his attribute panel had disappeared. He now had complete control over this body, and even his stand had become stronger. The abilities he could use when he first became a vampire had also become more potent. Or rather, it was when he regained control over himself. Previously, the mismatch of the body made it a bit difficult to operate, but now it was different, he had fully adapted. Now, Jonathan's body is completely mine. Colin Kidd. The dead apostle half knelt on the ground, bowing to Dio. How is it? It's done, Lord Dio. Just as you commanded, a gathering of 80 dead apostles has taken place in this mansion. Among them, there is even one advanced dead apostle. All of them have submitted to your charm, Lord Dio. If one looked closely, behind Colin Kidd, there were other dead apostles also half kneeling. Well done. Dio nodded and picked up a book, walking to a nearby bookshelf. I can feel, the Holy Grail War is about to begin. The time is approaching, a Holy Grail War where we win on one side and reach the peaceful paradise on the other. In this world, too, we can be sure. Dio spoke, turning to the countless apostles with a smile. Celebrate. It won't be long. Dio will create a heaven where we can all live peacefully forever. You will no longer face the pursuit of the Holy Church and the Mages Association. What do you want to do? Master, you're back. Dio spoke with a smile, but there was no trace of respect in his tone towards the master, just treating him like any other dead apostle. It was only natural. How could Dio let someone else be his master? Magnificent. Louis Schmidt looked at the countless dead apostles and clicked his tongue. I didn't expect that in just over a year, so many dead apostles would gather. Louis Schmidt had a bit of a headache thinking about it. Was this the ability shown by the villain savior? Without a doubt, all these dead apostles were all major evildoers. Envious of Dio's power, they were also attracted by his charm. More than half of them had the determination to sacrifice their lives for Dio. And Dio achieved all this in just over a year. However, there is indeed information. Louis Schmidt adjusted his face slightly and continued, this time, the enemies are not to be underestimated. Oh, tell me about it. Dio said, as if floating, sitting on the bookshelf. Yes, this time, the enemies, first is the Mages Association, led by the Queen of the Clock Tower, Bartholmelkoi Lorelei. She herself has a record of subjugating high-ranking dead apostles, and she also has a team of 50 called clones. I think most of you dead apostles have some understanding of them. Each member is a high-level magus, capable of defeating mid-level dead apostles, and several of them together can handle high-level dead apostles. And, there are 50 of them. Go on. Well, then there's another team. Although nominally we're on the same side, it's only in name. After all, the other army is the Holy Church. An army of 80. Each one is more dangerous to you than magus, and about half of them have undergone sanctification. Perhaps you haven't heard of it. No, I've heard of it. Isaac Barnes, a pale-faced dead apostle and currently the only high-level dead apostle under Dio, said, I've encountered them before, each one is not easy to deal with. Well, let me reiterate. Louis Schmidt nodded and continued. Those troops, called sanctification, are actually mechanization. Some of them cause damage to dead apostles, comparable to nuclear bombs or any chemical weapons. In the presence of such beings, about half of the 80. In other words, around 40. The scene remained quiet, so quiet that Louis Schmidt didn't know what to say. Did these dead apostles not care about their lives? Were they really willing to give everything to Dio? That guy, is handsome. Continue. Sure. Louis Schmidt smiled and said, coughing a bit. So let me continue. Although these people are nominally our allies, they are dead after all. When they see you guys, who are dead apostles, they will probably rush up without hesitation. I see. Dio floated down from the bookshelf and said as he walked, So, the current situation is that all three sides are each other's enemies, excluding the heroic spirit they will summon next. Yes, that's right. Dio laughed. In reality, he couldn't act yet, because he hadn't truly connected with the Holy Grail. If he engaged in real combat now, before the Holy Grail War started, he would disappear. So, he had to wait a little longer. It's good then, let's just crush them like this, both the Holy Church and the Mages Association, and then, I will make all of you obtain eternal peace. Lord Dio, Lord Dio, Lord Dio, Lord Dio. Dio enjoyed the cheers, then turned to Louis Schmidt and said, the Mages Association's army is called Clone, so what about the Holy Church? Did they have a name? Yes, they do. Louis Schmidt's expression was somewhat strange as he continued, the army formed by the executors dispatched by the Holy Church is called Iscariot. 215 The Holy Grail War begins. Oh, this is really great. Ambrose Conant. Hansa exclaimed excitedly. You agreed to my proposal. Well, Ambrose Conant nodded expressionlessly. I also think Anderson is quite handsome. That's right. Especially when we all charge forward together, it's so majestic. Hans's face was flushed with excitement, and he was already looking forward to it. During the battle, he planned to shout, we are the Iscariot. Iscariot. Yo. Just thinking about it was so grand. Those real priests, perhaps they wouldn't say something like that or compare themselves to Iscariot, but they wouldn't mind. They were executors. Similar to the Iscariot in that manga, they had no psychological pressure at all. 1992. Egypt, Cairo. Kazuya, carrying 2 suitcases, sneakily made his way over using unconventional channels. While he could have come directly, Kazuya didn't want others to know about his participation in the Holy Grail War, or the fewer people who knew, the better. Moreover, if not for this discretion, he might have been controlled as soon as he arrived in Egypt. Several airports in Egypt were filled with members of the Mages Association, the Church, and the Dead Apostles, all searching for those who entered Egypt through such channels. In other words, allies could turn into enemies at any moment, directly seizing command spells from those on the opposing side and strangling them. The 7 magus from the Mages Association had come together, while the 7 magus on Kazuya's side, including him, were largely unknown, coming from different places. So, they started blocking places like airports, knowing that seizing even one would be a significant gain. Several battles erupted in Egypt, often revolving around the control of these locations. The conflict between the Dead Apostles and the Church, both assigned to the same faction by the Holy Grail, never simmered down. Even if they were supposed to be on the same side, they engaged in deadly combat upon encountering each other. Kazuya managed to come over using stealth methods. He didn't expect to keep it a secret for long, but hiding for a few days was better than nothing. They were certain to devise strategies and countermeasures based on the different mages participating. The Church, Mages Association, and a large group of Dead Apostles gathered unabashedly and clashed in the largest city in Egypt, which had already experienced several battles. To the outside world, unaware of the events, the sudden increase in terrorist attacks and frequent gas leaks in Cairo seemed inexplicable. People died at the slightest provocation. The once lively streets of Egypt had become significantly quieter. Kazuya mourned this, yet felt a strange sense of relief, considering the crowd he encountered during his reconnaissance a year ago. Furthermore, with fewer people, the streets were somewhat cleaner. After settling into the room he had previously disguised, Kazuya took out the 7 holy relics he had prepared. A fragment of the Round Table, a slab from Olympus, Lionheart King's armguard, Demon King Oda Nobunaga's severed sword, Avalon, and a stone from Alucard. The first summon would likely be one of the Round Table Knights, the second might be a hero or demigod from Olympus, the third, without surprises, would be Lionheart King, the fourth might be Oda Nobunaga, the fifth would be King Arthur, the sixth, possibly Vlad III, but as Alucard. So, who should he summon? Kazuya stared at the 5 holy relics in front of him, with Avalon already implanted in him. Although it currently served no purpose, he held onto it just in case. This Holy Grail War was different now, no longer a simple Holy Grail War. Dead Apostles, the Holy Church, and the Mages Association. All 3 factions were mutually unsympathetic. Each faction had gathered a large number of elites. For example, the Mages Association brought not high-level magus, but high-powered forces. Clone Force, designated Sealing Enforcer. At least 3 high-ranking Dead Apostles had appeared on their side. The church's Iscariot had also gradually gathered hundreds of executors. When Kazuya recalled the names of the church's forces this time, his mouth twitched slightly. Was this some kind of joke? In such a serious situation? It feels about right, the connection to the Greater Holy Grail is almost ready. Now, it's time to prepare for the heroic spirit's summoning. At this moment, another person also arrived in Egypt. Rito Ishizaki, who had just gotten off the plane, looked at this unfamiliar city. The heart in his chest seemed to beat several hundred times faster than usual, as if it was about to leap out. Wait a moment. A voice came from behind, making Rito Ishizaki pause slightly. It was spoken in Japanese. Was it calling him? Hanzo walked over, smiling at Rito Ishizaki. They were responsible for this airport, and they would stop and check anyone showing magical fluctuations or someone with their left or right hand back invisible. Now was no exception. He saw this person, Rito Ishizaki, with a glove on his right hand. Ah, a Japanese person. How fortunate, the third language is just right. Rito Ishizaki froze. It's not that he didn't want to walk away, but he couldn't. Now he regretted. He should have summoned a heroic spirit first and then come. Now, this person, judging by the attire, a priest, similar to someone like Kirei Kotomine in Fate Zero. Damn it, how could he possibly win against such a person? Oh, the magical fluctuations and the mark on the right hand. Hanzo walked up to the motionless Rito Ishizaki and lifted his right hand glove with a smile. Jackpot. With that, the priest with an eye patch rested his hand on Rito Ishizaki's shoulder and said, "How about taking a little trip with me?" Hey, Hanzo, why are you running in with a priest outfit again? Just then, another person ran over and complained, "This will give our sanctuary." Before he could finish his sentence, he saw the uncovered right hand of Rito Ishizaki held up by Hanzo and was stunned. The command spells on it clearly told him one thing: this was a master. 216 Heroic Spirit Summoning. So powerful even something like this exists. Ryunosuke Ryu looked at the dozens of holy artifacts in front of him, shook his head after a moment, and said, "But I still don't want them." Why? Colin Kidd looked at the man they brought from the airport and asked, "With so many holy artifacts, you can definitely summon powerful heroic spirits." "I know, but forget it." Ryunosuke Ryu shook his head. "Actually, I just want to summon that boss. Giles de Raiz. Lord Dio." Colin Kidd quickly saluted. "Yes." Dio descended from the nearby stairs and looked at Ryunosuke Ryu. "It doesn't matter. If you want to summon him, go ahead. His sea demon is a good weapon, whether it's the army of sea demons or the giant sea demon that comes later." "Yes, thank you, Lord Dio." Ryunosuke Ryu smiled and saluted, full of anticipation in his tone. "The child you wanted has been arranged. Let Colin take you there." "Oh, Lord Dio is indeed generous. Colin, have you chosen your holy artifact?" After saying this, Dio looked at Colin Kidd. "No, not yet. Does Lord Dio have any recommendations?" "Well, now we can begin, the heroic spirit summoning." Bartholomew Lorelei stood in front of the summoning circle for heroic spirits. Almost everything was ready, the state of the Holy Grail was intact, and now it was time for heroic spirit summoning. Bartholomew took a deep breath and looked at the mummy in front of her, taking another deep breath. Fill, 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 fill. Let each be turned over 5 times, simply breaking asunder the fulfilled time. Magical energy began to flow. All the magical energy around gradually gathered, including Bartholomew's magical energy. Just with this, it could already be judged that the heroic spirit to be summoned next must be an incredibly powerful existence. "Your body shall serve under me. My fate shall be with your sword. Submit to the beckoning of the Holy Grail. If you will submit to this will and this reason." Among the many proxies, Kirei Kotomine recited the incantation with an expressionless face, feeling a burning sensation like fire in his body. A large amount of magical energy was drawn out, and the magic circuits began to ache. Then answer. "An oath shall be sworn here. I shall attain all virtues of all of heaven. I shall have dominion over all evils of all of hell. From the 7th heaven, attended to by 3 great words of power, come forth from the ring of restraint, protector of the balance." Kazuya completed the final incantation the next moment, unlike the usual crimson light that flashed before him. His enhanced eyes quickly regained their vision, and after looking around the room, he clenched his fist. It succeeded. Bartholomew Lorelei stared at the summoning circle in front of her, looking at the heroic spirit that appeared in front of her, her servant. The heroic spirit that appeared in front of her had tan skin, black hair, golden pupils, draped in a white robe, and adorned with the decorations of the golden pharaoh. So, you are my servant. Bartholomew Lorelai's faced this ancient pharaoh without a hint of fear. If it's the incantation you recited, then it should be so, but the face of the pharaoh was filled with indelible anger. Magus, did you use some catalyst when summoning me? Confess it honestly. Did you use the arrow of impalement or the chariot fragment used in the battle with the Hittite king, the inscription covenant with the Western Tower, or did you dare to borrow courage from the heavens and snatch my mummy? Can't you see for yourself? Bartholomew directly met the angry gaze, arrogantly as if saying, recognize your identity. Pharaoh, it seems you're a magus with some ability. However, is that so? A moment of silence. Haha, not bad courage. To dare to meet the gaze of the pharaoh, it seems you're a magus with some ability. However, a tremendous killing intent directly rushed towards Bartholomew, just a gaze of killing intent, and the air vibrated with it. The magus around immediately became tense. But it was useless. A dazzling light blossomed in this underground space, limited to the tip of this ship. The genuine tip of the artifact emitted scorching light directly toward Bartholomew, who was within arm's reach. In an instant, the wind stirred. The air around, without any command, suddenly gathered. The space trembled, creating a small-scale storm around this house. The wind blade that could easily tear apart the magus went against this dazzling light. Afterward pierced through. The light pierced through the wind, and the move that was comparable to a grand magecraft was instantly annihilated. Bartholomew's expression changed for the first time from the beginning to the present. The blow just now was just her casual move, but this was because the heroic spirit in front of her was also just a casual move, and she thought it was unnecessary to exert her full strength. But now, she understood. That light could only barely be resisted with her full strength and a series of rituals. Just a casual move had already surpassed countless noble phantasms. Boom! The barrier in front of Bartholomew shattered. The more than 10 magus supporting this barrier were directly blown out, spitting out blood from their mouths. But it barely stopped this light. Commoner. The wrathful king stepped towards Bartholomew step by step, his gaze cold as if looking at a dead person. Since you dared to snatch my mummy, you should know what fate awaits you. I give you two choices, be fed to the divine beast or have all magus perish on the surface. Oh, don't even think about using the curse. Before you descend, my divine light will turn this place into ashes. Bartholomew waved her hand slightly, signaling the magus behind her to stop. I won't choose either. Bartholomew exhaled, not showing any fear even in the face of this wrathful king. There was no talk of asking him if he wanted the Holy Grail or anything like that. She just said, remember your identity. You are just a servant. Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. 217 Heroic Spirit Summoning, Part 2. Ha ha, ha ha ha, ha 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 ha. The pharaoh burst into laughter. The next moment, an infinite killing intent surged towards Bartholomew Lorelai. Bravo. You have spirit. I am radiance, I am the heavens, I am generous. Let me see how long your spirit can endure. How long can you persist in front of me? Until that point I will spare your life. But do not attempt to command me. As long as you bore me, the radiance of my glory will reduce you all to ashes. Are you kidding me? Bartholomew Lorelai retorted in annoyance. I've already said it. You are my servant, and I am your master. Oh. The pharaoh took 2 steps forward. Did you realize the trap in my words? Or do you genuinely believe it from the bottom of your heart? It doesn't matter. Even if you pass this time, if I find you boring, the radiance of my glory will burn all of you to ashes. You're overstepping. Bartholomew Lorelai took a deep breath. She thought she had been arrogant enough, but because she was Bartholomew, the lord of the clock tower, no one minded, and no one dared to mind. But now this servant of hers was even more arrogant than her. Moreover, there was a fleeting moment when she felt, deep inside, that it should be like this. However, it was just a moment. You haven't told me your name yet, have you? Rider. Bartholomew Lorelai asked, confirming the class of the person she had just summoned. Although she had her own speculations, it still needed to be confirmed by the servant in front of her with his own words. Ha ha. The pharaoh laughed. Since you want to know, then listen carefully. I am the great pharaoh. King of kings. My name is Ozymandias. Indeed. It was confirmed. Bartholomew Lorelei sighed slightly in relief. The heroic spirit in front of her was the one she wanted to summon, and it was the one she summoned using that mummy Ozymandias, the 19th dynasty pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Ramesses II. Undoubtedly, he was the top-tier heroic spirit. And now, the Holy Grail War was taking place in Egypt. With the added advantage of being a familiar territory. How much power could this top-tier heroic spirit display now? At this moment, ripples also gradually emanated from the side. Oh, what's this? Ozymandias looked over. Other heroic spirits. Show me. Yes. Bartholomew Lorelei nodded and said, in different directions, other heroic spirits are being summoned, a total of 7. But, the strongest one should be you, right? Of course, I am the pharaoh. No one can surpass me. Ozymandias declared. Good. Come with me and take a look, my subjects. Then, this moment, a song echoed from the next room. It was as if covering the entire Cairo, the singing resonated from far away. What's this? Ozymandias showed an interested expression. Without a doubt, this was another extraordinary level heroic spirit. From next door, and, it seemed to be attracted by something. Success. Nosy Laird looked at the heroic spirit in front of him and clenched his fist. The heroic spirit was adorned in a white robe, with long green hair, and had an elegant face that resembled that of a beautiful girl, but not quite a girl. No, it was impossible to determine its gender. That heroic spirit was just too beautiful. Are you the master who summoned me? The heroic spirit in front of him said. Yes, yes. Noel Laird was stunned for a moment before responding, indeed, that's correct. So, you are. Servant, Lancer, real name is Enkidu, replied Enkidu. Suddenly, he looked into the distance. What's wrong, Lancer? Noel Laird quickly asked. Right, in this Holy Grail War, it seems there's more than just one or two with complicated feelings, but, I didn't expect to encounter him here. Enkidu, with the highest level perception skills, sensed the familiar aura in the distance King of Heroes, Gilgamesh's aura. Then, Enkidu began to sing. The song echoed throughout the entire city of Cairo. People began to wonder where the sound came from, and at the same time, his words were indeed conveyed through the song. In the dim underground chamber. As the fading light revealed the room, the figure summoned in the heroic spirit summoning circle became visible. Draped in a red cloak, adorned with a red top hat and glasses reflecting light. Holding 2 guns, one black and one white, he sat on a coffin that appeared out of nowhere. Then, he slowly raised his head and, in his deep voice, said, "So, you are my master." Yes. Kazuya removed his gloves, revealing 5 command seals on the back of his hand, the only means to determine if he was a master, and continued, "I am your master, if there's no mistake, you are Alucard, right?" "Exactly." Alucard chuckled, "Servant, Lancer, Dracula, or now, Alucard, responding to your summons." Speaking these words, Alucard himself was somewhat confused. Who was he now? Undoubtedly, he was Vlad III. Summoned as Vlad III, the one who hated how he was portrayed as a vampire, was summoned. He despised vampires, yet now he was simply a vampire himself. One, designed to hate vampires, a monstrous creature like him. Longing for his own end, to be killed by humans as an immortal monster. That was his current identity. However, it wasn't that simple. He was not just Vlad III, he was also Alucard. The holy relic used by Kazuya to summon him was the remains left after Alucard's death, and he would return from there once again. Possessing the will of Alucard. And now, the will of Alucard and the will of Vlad III merged. In other words, what Kazuya summoned was Vlad III, primarily due to the vampire-hating identity and lack of a distinct will. Simultaneously, the will of another figure with a similar aversion to vampires, derived from the holy relic, took over the will of Alucard. In short, the one standing before him, without a doubt, was Alucard. He was summoned to existence, a life that originally did not exist, and became Kazuya's heroic spirit. 218 Heroic Spirit Summoning, Part 3. Kazuya breathed a sigh of relief, although he was worried that summoning the detestable vampire lord would be disastrous. At that point, he might have to abandon this Holy Grail War. But now, it was confirmed. His stand had already examined it closely, the figure before him was indeed Alucard. At that moment, he also glanced behind him, at the endless souls. The river of death, everything was beneath Alucard's soul, and he controlled those boundless spirits. True name, Alucard. Class, Lancer. Alignment, Chaotic good. Strength, C. Endurance, B. Agility, C. Mana, B. Luck, D. Noble phantasm, X. Class skills. Magic resistance, C. Can nullify spells of 3 verses or lower, cannot defend against greater magecraft and ritual spells above that level. Personal skills. King of Undead, A. As a vampire, Alucard has no weaknesses to silver bullets or holy water. Unless his heart is destroyed, he is practically immortal. Resurrection, X. Due to the nature of his noble phantasm, even if his heart is destroyed, he can resurrect once again, unless all the souls within him are completely killed. Phantom form, A. Transforms his body into shadows to evade attacks, pass through walls. However, with the ability of either realization, this has become less useful. As for evading attacks, Alucard doesn't bother. But as the strongest vampire, even if he doesn't evade, it's still the highest level capability. Bat form, A. Transforms his body into countless bats. As the strongest vampire, even if he doesn't bother, it's still the highest level capability. Mist form, A. Transforms his body into mist. As the strongest vampire, even if it's not used frequently, it's still the highest level capability. Enhancement, A. Raises his strength and endurance by 1 rank. Night vision, A. Clear vision even in complete darkness. Clairvoyance, C. The ability to clearly see things at a distance. Familiar, A. Can turn creatures, living and non-living, into his familiars through contamination. Hypnosis, charm, suggestion, A. Basic abilities of vampires. Noble phantasms. Kasul, C. A white handgun with a 13mm caliber, featuring high firing rate and power, more akin to a hand cannon than a handgun. Jackal, C. A black handgun with a 13mm caliber, possessing greater power than Kasul, but lacks the ability to fire continuously. Vampire, A. Any living being killed by him, after consuming their blood, their souls will enter Alucard's River of Death and fight for him. River of Death, X. Alucard releases all the absorbed souls to materialize and aid him in battle. And many more abilities. Alucard can be considered the ultimate vampire, possessing nearly all the abilities associated with vampires, and all at the highest level. Not only that, but he lacks the weaknesses commonly found in vampires. Strength without weaknesses. That's the situation. However, he rarely utilizes most of these abilities. Immortality makes him uninterested in avoiding attacks and he simply stands there, enduring the assaults. He sacrifices 2 lives first, then retaliates. That's his typical tactic. As for being classified as a lancer, it's probably due to the army in his River of Death, the Wallachian Knights, who impale everyone, offering a piercing execution. Different from Iskander, but somewhat similar. His army from life, all the commands are within his River of Death, and now they fight for him. Good, well, let the battle begin. Kazuya smiled and put on his gloves. You can start whenever you want. I won't impose any restrictions on your actions. Feel free to fight anyone you like. My only condition is let me witness it with my own eyes. Oh, why is that? As you can see, I'm a mangaka. What I need is, of course, plenty of inspiration, visuals, and that's also my reason for participating in the Holy Grail War. Only here can I see things I usually wouldn't. How about it? Fair enough. But, Master, I'm a bit thirsty. Do you have blood ready? How about mine? Kazuya extended his hand. Oh, sure, that works even better. HMPH. Kazuya chuckled, removed the glove from his left hand, and used a small knife to make a cut on his wrist. Blood flowed into the prepared cup. As long as Alucard kills Somkons, he can seize their soul by consuming their blood. This way, it was impossible to seize souls now. And, the most fundamental way to interact with heroic spirits, in Kazuya's view, is to give trust. Of course, this is true for the majority. Some heroic spirits still need to be handled with caution. Hiss. Ripple and healing magecraft. The wound healed in a matter of seconds. The powerful source gave Kazuya formidable blood regeneration ability. With just a cup of blood, a few seconds were enough for complete recovery. Alucard took the cup, drank the blood inside, and then smiled. So, the contract is established, my master. At the next moment, the sound of a song reached them. Before Kazuya could say anything, the song began. A delightful melody. What is this? Ha ha ha, it seems something interesting has appeared. Alucard laughed loudly. How about it, Master, even though it doesn't seem like an invitation, is it alright if I come uninvited? I've said it before. You're free. I'll only give you suggestions, not commands. Oh, well then, what's your suggestion? Kazuya smiled. Let's go. Let's rewind time a bit. The Holy Church. It's been a little while. Kotomine Kirei summoned the heroic spirit king of heroes, Gilgamesh. Who do you think I am, young one? Isn't this a familiar face, Kirei? Kotomine Kirei raised an eyebrow. Do you know me? Of course, who wouldn't know me? I am the king of heroes, Gilgamesh. This Holy Grail war is a bit different from the past. It looks quite interesting, doesn't it? Gilgamesh looked around at the full church and grinned. Moreover, the magical energy within this body right now is quite abundant. It's not the magical energy you provided, Kirei. Of course. Kotomine Kirei nodded. Magical energy is something better reserved for professionals, after all. For example, in the current underground of this church, several magus, with their hands and feet severed, were imprisoned as a source of magical energy. Then let the king play around a bit. This time, Gilgamesh's words were cut off halfway. Because, not everyone had heard the echoing melody in the sky. Is it you? 219, First Battle. Collision of super-class noble phantasms. Boom. The one who first pushed open the door and entered was the pharaoh, Ramesses II. Ozymandias. Not bad at all. Is this Holy Grail war starting with such interesting developments? Noel Laird stood dumbfounded on the side. The servant with indescribable beauty sang loudly. Are you Ryder? Watching the person entering through the door, Lancer, Enkidu, stopped his own singing and turned his head to ask. Indeed. I am the king of kings, Pharaoh, Ozymandias. I see. Indeed, there are similarities, such as in arrogance. Enkidu smiled slightly. It was a pure smile without malice, and the words from his mouth were not meant to be antonyms. They were spoken plainly. Therefore, Ozymandias showed no signs of anger. Oh, someone similar. You're saying there's someone in this world similar to me? Yes, that's right. Enkidu nodded. And they're about to arrive. As for the battlefield, let's leave it outside. Swish. The next moment, he jumped out directly. I forgot to mention, my name is Enkidu. I didn't expect it to start so soon, the first Holy Grail war. How about it? Aren't you going to stop him? Ozymandias looked with interest at Basileus. No need. Didn't you say you're the strongest? Then go and end this Holy Grail war for me. Kill all the enemies, the servants, the dead apostles, the people from the church. The rest are just pawns, no need to care. Ozymandias laughed. Although I want to say it's okay. But, this Holy Grail war is indeed interesting. That Enkidu, and the guy he's going to fight, are both like that. Even I felt a bit of pressure. Even I, to some extent. Open your eyes wide and watch carefully. Ozymandias laughed heartily. What you're about to witness is the true battle of heroic spirits. Gilgamesh laughed and took out the golden key. What are you planning to do? Ambrose Conant looked at Gilgamesh, frowned, and asked. Rejoice, mongrels. What you are about to witness is the serious demeanor that I, the king, have never shown before. Saying that, the gate of Babylon activated, and the sword appeared in his hand, the Enuma Elish. Or, Kirei. Do you want to disturb my pleasant surprise with your spell again? No, that won't happen. Kotomine Kirei said expressionlessly. What, it seems you're still boring now, not as interesting as in that manga. Gilgamesh didn't have memories of the 4th or 5th Holy Grail Wars, no, not completely. He had memories of being fooled by someone during the 4th Holy Grail War. At the same time there were memories of observing the current situation when he was in the throne of Herax. The next moment, Gilgamesh jumped high, and directly disappeared from everyone's sight. Release the familiar. Project the image. See what that Gilgamesh is up to. Ambrose Conant gave the command. Yes, I've already sent the familiar to catch up as quickly as possible, but, still unable to catch up with that heroic spirit. What happened? Desert. More than 90% of this country is semi-desert and desert. And now in the midst of this desert, two figures appeared, two heroic spirits. Under the night sky, a golden heroic spirit floated in midair. On the ground, a barefoot white heroic spirit traversed the desert. Smiling, Without unnecessary words, the king of heroes, Gilgamesh, raised the sword in his hand, the Enuma Elish. Without hesitation, he directly used his strongest noble phantasm, a strike that tore apart heaven and earth. Ta! Sing freely, Enuma Elish. The sky was cleaved open, the earth was torn apart. As if the whole world was trembling. Is this, the full power of Enuma Elish? Through the eyes of Alucard, who was rushing over, Kazuya looked at the scene. Alucard's eyes were like 1,000 eyes, able to easily see into the distance, and not even the night could hinder them. Moreover, with such a massive magical energy fluctuation. After a while, Alucard stopped his footsteps. What's wrong? Ah, when I sensed it, there's no need to intervene. Alucard stopped and laughed. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha, so that's how it is. It's confirmed. Is this humanity? Is this the heroic spirit? Ha ha. Ridiculous. If it's this kind of guy, he should be able to kill me, right? So, how about you? Can you give me that feeling? Kazuya knew that Alucard was not talking to him, but to someone else, someone who rushed over to him. Try it and you'll know. A knight clad in menacing armor, wielding a sword, charged towards Alucard. It was clear. That person, Kurakawa Kazuya knew. The knight of treachery Mordred. Facing the strike that tore the world apart. The servant, Enkidu, who descended as a lancer, smiled. Plants appeared on the ground. In the desert, little green buds began to appear, spreading rapidly afterwards, extending throughout the entire desert. Testing performance and such. I'll also unleash my full power, Gil. It is the concept of the circulation of life, a seed woven to overcome the terror of the primordial, returning to the past and future, and the future returning to eternity, connecting the earth and the sea together with the sky. The buds temporarily released, forming something like lightning piercing through the heavens and the earth. It was vines. As if all the world's vitality had gathered. The clouds swayed, and the earth wailed. No need to be polite. With Enkidu's words, the vines gathered together, winding around Enkidu. Enkidu's body also transformed into something similar to the vines. I am a weapon, use it to your heart's content. Enuma Elish. It was a spear that pierced through the heavens and the earth. As if binding the sky and the earth tightly together. Afterward, the collision of two noble phantasms occurred. 220. The arrival of ruler. The collision of the two noble phantasms was just the beginning, not the end. Even with such a clash of noble phantasms, both heroes, the two servants, remained unscathed. Gate of Babylon. In an instant, a vast array of treasures covering the sky appeared. The gate of Babylon opened to its maximum. A vast array of treasures covering the sky appeared. The gate of Babylon opened to its maximum extent. The golden radiance in the sky was like a sun, illuminating the desert. The king of heroes going all out. Kotomine Kirei looked at the transmitted images with an expressionless face, but he tightened his fist. This power was several times stronger than what was depicted in that manga. Not only that, compared to before, the king of heroes Gilgamesh, who briefly appeared in Fuyuki City during the Fourth Holy Grail War, was also several times stronger. So, what about the other side? Lancer, named Enkidu. I'll borrow a bit of the earth. Enkidu raised his hand and patted the ground. The next moment, countless noble phantasms started emerging from the entire ground, not inferior to Gilgamesh's Gate of Babylon. The next moment, the noble phantasms on both sides began to clash. Each noble phantasm was like a cannonball, no, a missile. Each strike on the ground would create an explosion with a radius of dozens of meters, and then, this kind of explosion multiplied by hundreds. And both sides were doing the same. At that moment, it was as if two nations, two armies, were engaged in a mutual confrontation war. Yes, this was war. A genuine war where one person could annihilate a nation. Without reservation, without restraint. The two of them were like beings without limits. A noble phantasm was launched, then another was loaded. It was like a war that could lead to the destruction of the world. If either side landed a hit, it could be considered a victory in the war. But no, it never happened. The battle continued. Gilgamesh laughed heartily, unable to stop his laughter. Exactly. This is it. Only you can give me such an exhilarating battle. Enkidu also laughed silently. But this was just the beginning. The battle was interrupted. Yes, it was no longer a battle that could be described as fighting. Interrupting this battle was a man shining like the sun. Ha ha, ha 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 ha. The pharaoh laughed, driving his temple to land on this sacred ground. Such an interesting battle, how could I not come to witness it, to participate? Get out of my way. Noble phantasms were shot at the pharaoh, but all of them were blocked. I am the king, pharaoh, king of kings, ruler of this world, Ozymandias. Mongrel, how dare you claim kingship in front of me? King of kings. Is there even a need to say it? There is no one in this world more noble than the pharaoh. A colossal pyramid appeared on the ground. That was Ozymandias, noble phantasm remescum tentiris, the shining great temple complex. This was his divine authority and also his strongest noble phantasm. It could even freely rewrite reality, the awe-inspiring, reality marble. Further combining multiple temples like the Temple of Dendera, the Temple of Karnak, and other, complex temples composed out of several temples, it incorporated the gigantic temples or shrines such as the Abu Simbel Temple and the Ramesseum. It was an otherworldly colossal compound temple that could not exist in reality. This noble phantasm could grant him immortality and seal other noble phantasms. And then, the three of them engaged in a melee. Gilgamesh's noble phantasms, Enkidu's noble phantasms, and the light beams shot out from Ozymandias' pyramid. In return, Enkidu gradually fell behind, not because of a shortage of magical energy. Both Ozymandias and Gilgamesh had plenty of magus supplying magical energy to them, regardless of the type. It was practically infinite, no problem fighting for several days. In terms of strength, the three were quite evenly matched to a certain extent, but Gilgamesh has achieved fame with the brilliance of fate spreading across the world, including Egypt. Before, not many people knew about Gilgamesh, but now, all magus worldwide, depicted by Kurokawa Kazuya, in Fate, or watching, especially those associated with mysteries. There were also those who were attracted by the story but were not mystery themselves, and many others. Popularity up. So, Enkidu, who could be said to be evenly matched, was relatively inferior to Gilgamesh, who was now approaching the peak of his power. And on the other side, Ozymandias was similar. Although he didn't have as much fame as Gilgamesh, don't forget where this is. This is Egypt. Who in this land could surpass this man in terms of fame? The three of them were of similar ranks, two with notable fame in Egypt, and one without. The imbalance in strength became apparent. And then, with a very tacit understanding, the three of them stopped at the same time. Gilgamesh didn't want to really harm his friend, and for Ozymandias, Enkidu was now in the same camp as him. As for Enkidu, there was no need for him to continue if both of them stopped. It seems, there's no need to continue the fight, and that's good. Let's use the Enuma Elish to bring the curtain down on this battle. Enuma Elish. Perfect, let me show you my Radiance Dendera electric bulb. Well then, let me do it again. Enkidu smiled, and the earth began to wail once again. Enuma Elish. The three noble phantasms, exceeding their specifications, collided once again, leaving behind a massive crater in the desert. The only thing in this crater was the perfectly intact temple. And within the temple, it clarified one thing: it confirmed the fact that heroes capable of matching him had appeared in this Holy Grail war. And just at this moment, a young girl descended upon this land. So the battle has already begun. The girl looked at the lingering aftermath of the battle in the distance and said, "Now that the location has been confirmed, it's still that temple, right? Let's go and take a look." Descending as a ruler-class girl, no, a saint, she held a staff and gazed at the distant pyramid emitting sunlight. She quietly made a decision. For some reason, she gave the impression that she might throw her staff at any moment in the next second. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.